Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Jay Wheatley, and my friend and co-host Zoe Hawkins.
Hi, everybody. We are back again with another episode in our ICF Coaching Competency series. And this week we're talking about Embodies, a coaching mindset, which is almost like an overhanger of all the other markers, because to embody a coaching mindset, you see that in many of the other competencies. So if you are doing the other competencies really well, you are to some extent embodying a coaching mindset. But we're going to talk through a few specific things related to this today.
Yeah, the ICF define this as develops and maintains a mindset that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered.
Yeah. And I think when you come onto a coaching program, what we see in many of our trainees is that opening of your mind, looking at lots of different perspectives, learning new skills to be able to see situations differently and almost accept there is no one truth. And I think this is what this talks to, is that as a coach, in order to be a great coach, you do need to embody much of what you are being taught. So if you're going to be working with your clients on a whole manner of goals and talking about overcoming limiting beliefs and understanding your values and exploring your emotions to help understand the wisdom that you get, it's important that you do that for yourself in all aspects of life. And we've talked on another podcast about over identifying as a coach, so you can take that too far. But there's an element of role modeling, I think, that happens in coaching in relationship. When you're in relationship with someone in an adult to adult way, there's a role modeling that takes place. And I think for me, that's what this competency is really talking about, is to what extent do you role model the coaching mindset?
Yeah, and the ICF have 8 different indicators currently around what a coaching mindset is. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of those in turn and bring those to life a little bit for you. The first one is acknowledges that clients are responsible for their own choices. So we know that when people are training to be coaches, one of the things that they need to keep check on is how much responsibility are they taking for the session, for the client's outcomes? Do they feel responsible for the client's life? And there are lots of different factors that play into that. And this is a reminder to coaches that the clients are responsible for their choices, for the decisions that they make. And so it's really important that a coach does not tell their client or their coachee what to do. That would not be coaching. And that at a very basic level is what this is talking to.
And it's those moments in a coaching conversation, isn't it, where your client says, "Well, what do you think?" And they look to consult you. Well, that is a moment where you have decisions to make about to what extent then does that lead you to step into some responsibility for your client. And I also think there's an art here in the goal setting and the work you do with your client. So if a client is setting a goal, let's say that they want to get promoted within 6 months, and they're clear that they're investing in the coaching because that's their goal and that's what they want, well, the client's not in control of that outcome. And I think there's a great skill with coaches to help clients to set goals that they are in control of for the client and also for the coach, so that you don't have this sense of responsibility for your client's outcomes. So you can work freely in the space to be able to help the client with all the things that they're in control of and accept some of the things that they're not in control of. So I think, yes, there's the mindset piece of accepting this and managing your own boundary between your responsibility and the client's. And there is a skill related to how you can make that easier upon both of you.
And also that you could look at this in another light as well, I think, which is where a client does not feel that they have control or responsibility even for the choices that they make. And so part of embodying a coaching mindset plays into the role modeling, but also helping the client to gain a new perspective around their relationship to the choices that they can or can't currently see or want to be able to make in their lives. So I think this one is a really good balancer. It's a good reminder, and it's useful to consistently check in with yourself. What am I taking responsibility for here, and what is the client taking responsibility for? And actually, that's a really useful conversation to have in the chemistry conversation, in the sessions with the client around the relationship. How are we doing together as coach and client? What are the dynamics here?
Well, and it plays into the next indicator, which is engages in ongoing learning and development as a coach, because I think that piece around what are you taking responsibility for as a coach? Well, let's face it, sometimes in life, people take responsibility for other people's stuff as well. So it's not just about you as the coach and the client, but if you look at your life on a broader perspective, to what extent do you take responsibility for others' emotions, perhaps, others' actions? What is your relationship with control and responsibility? And when we look to the indicator, which is the second one about engaging in ongoing learning and development as a coach, that is as much about your own mindset as it is about your skills and ability to show up in an expanded capacity for your clients. So for me, this number 2 talks about, yes, investing in your CPD. We have our emotions coaching practitioner training and our group and team coaching program, which is really about being able to, expand your capacity as a coach. And certainly with the emotions coaching practitioner training, it's about looking inwards to your own self-development and your own mindset and being able to work on your own stuff, I suppose, your own relationships in order to show up in a better place for your clients. What else would you say about that one, Jo?
I think the word that comes into my mind is around being fluid as a coach, that ensuring that we don't become fixed or solidify around certain things or views of the world, and creating an environment. Like if we're committed to our own learning and development, which means that we're open to change, that we're open to being challenged and to always becoming, then it enables our clients, I think, to more easily even dip a toe into that way of being in the world. So it is important in a practical sense to have a continuous professional development plan. And, that ought to be for at least the next 12 months. And how do you create that? You reflect on the feedback you've had from your clients, the discussions you have with your supervisor, your own reflective practice activities. What are the things you feel like, yes, like I can do this? Or look at the different competencies in the competency frameworks, not necessarily as a whole, but in the micro indicators. What are the ones I think, yes, I feel confident, I always get great feedback on that? And what are the ones we think, oh, yeah, there's definitely some development for me around there, or there's something emotionally or in my body that feels a little bit like, oh, there's a little bit of doubt there. So to create that, and you know what, it's fun. Coaching is about growth, and so coaches enjoy learning. And so it's about finding learning and development activities that you can afford to do, that you will enjoy, that will energize you, that will help you to grow and develop. Don't be frightened of challenge, being challenged in that development. And sometimes that comes through the content or techniques or views. And sometimes it'll be because you don't like what you're learning. And there's learning in that for you about how you respond to that too. So I think this is a permission. It's like, yes, one of the great things about being a coach is the expectation that you will continue to learn for the rest of your life.
Mm. And when it comes to CPD, yes, there are courses you can do. There's also a lot of free events. If you head over to our YouTube channel, you will see summits that we've done in the past. We've had coaching summits over various years. Depending on the time you're listening to this, we have a summit that goes live on the 2nd of October, which for us is next week, which you can sign up to at igcompany.co.uk/emotions24. If you're listening to this after that summit's gone live, it will all be on our YouTube channel. So you can access free resources to help to stimulate your mind and introduce you to new concepts. And that's important because you need to, for us, be continually expanding alongside the industry. So what we're seeing in the industry at the moment is obviously pressures and introductions around AI, artificial intelligence, and discussions around how is that going to influence coaching. Climate change, there's discussions around the role of coaching in climate change. There's racial consciousness, and how as coaches do we need to all be more racially conscious and how that shows up in our practice. So go out there and find micro CPDs to stimulate your mind, to help you to direct your broader CPD plan around where you may want to plan to go on these different programs. And I think that learning and development as a coach feeds into the next one, which is about developing an ongoing reflective practice to enhance one's coaching. Because without reflective practice, you aren't going to know what your strengths and development areas are, and therefore what you want to invest in from a CPD perspective. So reflective practice isn't just about a one-time event and thinking about, well, what do I want to do next year for my CPD? It's about reflecting in the session to be able to think, how is this going? And be able to pivot in the session, and to reflect after the session to be able to think, what went well there? What's happening between me and my client? What are the psychodynamics at play? So it's having a lens, a helicopter view, really, of not just you as a coach, but also your coaching practice.
Yeah, and a word that doesn't appear in this particular indicator, but I think is important, is to be critically reflective. Because if the invitation isn't to be critically reflective, then for some people, they will err on the side of all the things I did really well. But for other people, they'll also be erring on all of the gap areas rather than trying to create a balanced kind of reflection on how they're developing as a coach, how their clients are experiencing them, and so on. And that reflective practice, we know, can be the most challenging thing about being a coach in terms of developing mastery as a coach. So I was chatting to somebody recently and they were asking me about recommendations around this area. And I said, I'd encourage you to read supervision books. And they were like, oh, really? Because they weren't thinking about training to be a supervisor. And I said, yes, because in my experience of reading books around that, although I am a qualified supervisor, but it gives you prompts to reflect, because for some people it's really difficult to, like, well, what do I reflect on? The competency frameworks, what's that? It doesn't light me up, and maybe they just want to pick a particular strand, or like I'll find I could be reading something, like around coaching just generally, and I naturally then will reflect on that and how that may or may not show up in my practice, or how I feel I am with that. It may be a blind spot for me, or it might be a new way of considering something that I think I already do. So, I suppose I'm just offering there some practical things that you can do. And also, reading books is part of learning and development. And also just to mention that on that learning and development piece, the ICF, I think, have a requirement. So you re-accredit every 3 years with the ICF, and they look for 40 CCEs, maybe, or equivalent. So that is part of what you are signing up to when you get accredited with the ICF. So it is really important that you don't leave it until the last minute, because, we're talking about a significant amount of CPD there that can't be fitted into, a 4-week period, for example.
Well, our emotions coaching practitioner training is 40 CCEs, and that's at least a 6-month long program. So that's the sort of size of program that you're looking at there. The next one is really interesting. So remains aware of and open to the influence of context and culture on self and others. And so when we apply this to ourselves, it's about I think this is about understanding that you will have unconscious bias, and you will be making assumptions and judgments about yourself, others, which will include your clients, because that's the nature of being a human being. But by becoming more and more aware of what those biases are, you can act in a way that is in service of your clients. So, that's one part of what this is talking to. And as I build on that, it's about knowing about the systemic influences at play. Like, so Jo, we've talked, haven't we, before, about there's this line between toxic positivity, which is you can achieve anything you set your mind to, which is sort of at the heart of coaching, and also recognizing that for some people that's not real because of the systemic influences that are at play. And so as a coach, we need to validate the lived experiences of our client. And I think that being aware of and remaining open to learning more and more about context and influences of culture is a big part of being a coach and embodying that mindset.
Yes, recognizing that, where we were brought up and who we were brought up by, who we were surrounded by, at the stories throughout previous generations, how they influence our beliefs about the world and our place in the world. And, sometimes for clients, they will bring things to coaching, which is they have got goals that they personally would like to achieve and beliefs they personally have, but they also are existing within a family system or a cultural system that doesn't have beliefs that complement that. And that can be a real struggle. So where you're talking about, validating that and what our role is as coaches in that process is. And also I think this is, as coaches, are you asking questions about these things? Do you have the courage to do that, to help the clients to understand those things? So it's both for the clients, but also for ourselves. So, I mean, this particular indicator is a huge thing in its own right.
So the next one is about use of self and one. So the next one is uses awareness of self and one's intuition to benefit clients. And I think the way we talk to this is about you using yourself as instrument, in the coaching. So an example of that might be where you're working with a client and you are feeling really anxious, but you're not sure that that's your own anxiety, but you're picking up on some of the clients. So it's these phenomena around transference, counter-transference, and parallel process, which we talk more about, in our programs. And in order to use yourself as an instrument, you need to do your own work. You need to be able to ground yourself. You need to be able to approach your clients with a clear energy and a clear head and a clear heart in order to be able to identify what's mine and what's theirs. It's useful to work with a supervisor who can help you to look at these dynamics and understand those patterns. So I think when it comes to mindset, it's about doing it, but it's also about how do you prepare the conditions within yourself to be able to do that well? Because otherwise it can be, it can be messy.
I think intuition is a lot to do with self-trust, the degree to which you trust yourself. And we all have different relationships with that at different times. And I think it is worth people exploring, like, what is my intuition? How do I know when I'm leaning into that? What does that feel like to me? I think it's also about intimacy. That self-trust is that intimacy with self, but also in the relationship, because in sharing something that you're intuitively sensitive to and noticing, it requires a degree of trust and openness and contracting around that in the relationship. And that might be around knowing, does your client welcome you sharing that in the relationship, or do they experience that as interference with no validity whatsoever? And that might be related to the client's own relationship with their intuition. So again, it's a useful pointer to something that you might want to discuss together, or explore with your client. Like, what's your intuition telling you about this, or when and how could you use your intuition as you're thinking about the next steps within this? Because you may be working with a client that's very cognitive and they've got stuck in the limits of that. And so they're searching for, how else can I make a decision about this? Or where else can I draw ideas from around it? So it's really great, I think, that intuition is listed here, because it's such an important part of what it is to be a coach, is being sensitive to the things that we notice that we're changing, that are changing as a result of what we're hearing and experiencing in the relationship with the client.
Mm. Yeah. So the next one is develops and maintains the ability to regulate one's emotions. And depending where you're at with your relationship with your emotions, this may feel easy or it may feel hard. But I think what this is talking to is the importance, again, of role modeling. So when you enter into a coaching space and you enter into it where you are experiencing emotional regulation and you have a healthy relationship with your emotions, and you understand that emotions are valuable and transient, you're more able to show up for your clients when they are not experiencing emotional regulation. So if a client comes into a session and, I don't know, they're particularly angry, or they're particularly sad, or they're frustrated, or they're guilty, or they're feeling shame about something, you're not going to back away from that because of the relationship you have with your own emotions in connection to that. You're more able to hold space for the client in a welcoming way of like, yes, these emotions are valid. These emotions aren't scary. These emotions are part of what it is to be human. Let's work through them in the context of your goal. That is a very rich and, I was going to say, healing space, healing of in the moment. Like if you're experiencing conflict, it's healing to be able to process and express your emotions around that and more able to reach a resolution, whether that's an internal resolution or with other people. So I think this is a big one for us. It's a big passion area, as probably many of you know if you're listening to this.
I think it's absolutely critical and essential work for coaches, and that's why it's listed here under Embodies a Coaching Mindset. Because let's take a practical example. If you're coaching, let's say 3 clients in a day, and each client is bringing something completely different, they're emotionally in different places. How do you coach that individual fully in service of them in that session and then leave that behind and not kind of absorb some of that you then inadvertently take into the next coaching session with the client? Because we can talk about like the emotional contagion, how we can sort of pass emotions on. And I think this is also around how we sustain ourselves as coaches emotionally, because to hold space for clients that are growing and they might be struggling initially and then they're thriving, lots of different emotional energies occur in coaching sessions. I think the word regulate is interesting. I'm thinking about from a neuroaffirmative perspective, we'll experience those things in different ways. But perhaps another practical example of this might be if you're feeling frustrated with your client, maybe the client isn't making the progress that you as the coach think they could be making, or they keep saying they're going to do things and then they don't. What does regulating your emotions sound like? How is that experience? And maybe it's about noticing it and then thinking about how you express that. So you can express things that you've noticed without actually feeling frustrated and expressing the frustration in a way that is not helpful to the client. So I think there is the emotions are the language of life. Clients come to coaching because of something that is emotional. So if they're struggling to make a decision, it may be because they are frightened of a consequence of making the wrong decision. So there is an emotion behind it. So whilst they may not come articulating that, that is what is underneath and being discussed in all coaching sessions. So the more equipped you can be thinking about learning and development around emotions, the more able you are to embody a coaching mindset and create a space where the client can make the progress that they want to.
Yeah. And for me, this is connected to your emotional intelligence as a coach. We hear coaches say, "Oh, my clients don't bring emotions. It just doesn't come up." And I know me and you are sat there and we're like, it does come up. It may not come up in words, but as you've described there, Joe, I'm struggling to make a decision about whether I take this new job or not. That is about emotions. It may be, as you said, fear of making the wrong decision. It may be confusion about what they should do. It might be that they are worried about making the wrong choice. It could be a whole manner of things, but yes, it's about emotions. And I think as a coach, like you look out for beliefs, you look out for limiting beliefs in your clients, and you look out for signs of their values, and you make observations and help them to spot patterns. Well, you as the coach, when you are more in touch with your own emotional experience and you're able to recognize your own emotions in life and handle those in a way that feels, helpful to you, you're going to be able to help your client to identify the different things that are in their way of being able to achieve their goal that are related to their emotions. So, yeah, for us, emotions are critical in coaching.
And it's actually the only word that is mentioned twice in embodies a coaching mindset in these criteria. So we've got develops and maintains the ability to regulate one's emotions and mentally and emotionally prepare for sessions. And part of that is I think it's preparing for the uncertainty. So when people are like, people tend to like to know what's going to happen in a conversation. Like we like to know, we like to feel prepared. And actually the art of embodying a coaching mindset is being able to step into that space not knowing anything in many ways. Yes, you'll know what your client has told you, but actually to meet them afresh in a way every time is a beautiful thing to be able to do. It enables people to kind of recreate themselves and to genuinely grow and learn and develop. And that mental preparation may be referring more to like, what have we covered before? What is the client's goals? You know, what might we do in our session together today? Did we agree? Did the client say how they wanted to use the session? And that emotional preparation is, how are you resourcing yourself emotionally for that session?
I think this one for me also recognizes that coaches are humans, and beyond the job, there is life. So if your house is anything like mine in the morning, there are mornings which go very smooth, and there are mornings which can be quite frantic, where, you're rushing for me to get 3 kids out the door, and that can be a bit stressful. And then I've got an appointment and there's traffic, so life happens. And yes, you can have all the skills to regulate your emotions, but what is it that you can do before you step into that session to make sure that your stuff doesn't bleed into the coaching session? Like, what's your ritual for being able to get ready to be able to show up for your clients in a grounded, healthy place? Um, you know, and life can stretch beyond the traffic and the kids. We know that, anything can happen. Losses, separations, all sorts of events can happen. And if you are an employed coach or an independent coach, client sessions are still likely to continue. You can't necessarily always just stop. So you need to be able to have some pretty robust practices for getting yourself ready, and not just putting a mask on to support your clients, but having a genuine place and way that you can get back into your healthy place.
And the final indicator is seeks help from outside sources when necessary. So, an obvious place for that would be supervision. So, something has come up in your coaching and you feel like you're not sure if you're in service of your client anymore because you feel completely and utterly stuck. You don't know where to go with the client. Maybe the dynamics are just don't feel congruent with the client being able to grow, and that feels different, or there's an ethical concern, or there's a well-being concern for yourself, as you're touching upon there, and you're not sure, is it appropriate for me to keep coaching at the moment? Maybe you're not sure what CPD to do, and that would be most useful. You've got your supervisor. You might also decide to engage with an ICF mentor coach if you feel like, actually, there are some of these things I'm not sure if I'm doing, to the best of my ability, completely in service of my clients. And you might also want to have a list of other places to be able to refer people to if that feels appropriate for you. And if you're coaching clients all over the world, I think some of the things to think about are, do you know what the local sources of support might be for those individuals?
I think when it comes to embodies a coaching mindset, seeking help from outside sources is also about recognizing that you can seek help. Sometimes ego can get in the way, can't it, of thinking like, no, I need to be able to handle this. I should know the answer. I am a trained and ethical coach. I need to be able to do this. Well, no, you don't. There are so many different scenarios and situations that arise, that every client is unique. Every client's situation is unique. So, and absolutely seek help, and even the help you seek will really be helping you to just make sense of your thoughts and your situation, because there are no clear-cut answers half the time for these things. So definitely yes to seeking help, and also having a mindset that enables you to seek help when you want and need to.
I think other sources of help are other peer coaches. So, you and I mean, as you say, like, what do you class as help? Like, I used to find it really helpful to discuss with you, like, I've got a client that I'm working with, X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Like, what would your thoughts be around this situation, and vice versa? And we I think we grew and developed, beyond our coaching training as a result of those conversations, because we had a very trusted relationship. I didn't ever feel I needed to pretend to be, some brilliant coach that I didn't feel that I was with you. I could just tell you exactly, what I was thinking. And, there are opportunities for people to co-coach, and you'll develop relationships with people on your coaching programs. We see a lot of people asking for help in our Coaching Crowd Facebook group. So lots of people asking there. I've got a client who, obviously not disclosing their name or any information whatsoever about them, but just seeking other perspectives. Like, is it okay to do this? And do you have any resources on this or activities around that? So it's recognizing that maybe you haven't done coaching training, but you're wanting to support people using a coaching approach, and wanting to learn about that. So you may be learning in more informal ways, or you've been on a coaching program, and it's almost like the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn, and so you're wanting to absorb that too. So what the ICF is saying, and we would echo, is that it's a really positive thing to seek help. And actually, that's what coaching clients are doing, is seeking help and support in order to go from good to great. Like, life is pretty good. I'm in a healthy place. I feel I might be blocking myself a little bit around this, or actually, I just would really enjoy having the support, like somebody walking side by side with me around this. So yes, hopefully that's helpful as a way to explore what actually is a coaching mindset. So you may not be a coach at all, and this might be really interesting to consider, or maybe you are, and there are certain things in there where you think, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that for a while. That's a useful thing for me to reflect on. Or perhaps we've mentioned some things you think, oh yeah, my CPD plan, I haven't got one at the moment. I really need to, make some decisions about that and plan that in.
Yeah, I suppose on that point, if you are thinking about your CPD plan, or as you've heard on the podcast today, how important emotions are in coaching, then come and explore our emotions coaching practitioner training. You can find that on our website, igcompany.co.uk/emotions coaching.